This episode is brought to you by Control N Consulting, where innovation meets expertise. We specialize in a range of services, including analysis and planning, custom software development, project management, as well as training and support. Our team is dedicated to ensuring the highest standards in quality assurance and testing. Choose Control N Consulting as your go-to partner for digital transformation and experience solutions tailored to propel your business forward.
Today, we have a software engineer, cloud engineer. Is that the safe? Which one is better? Do you prefer cloud engineer or software engineer?
I normally use both.
You use both?
Yeah. So in the instance where I would use software is when now we're speaking of like where we need to develop apps or software that's going to be used by users. At the same time with cloud engineering now we're speaking of where is this software going to run and how we actually going to deploy it. So now that's where I would involve cloud engineering. So yeah.
Okay. For those who don't know you, who is Sibabalwe?
Yeah. Sibabalwe, I would say is besides like the title being a software engineer, I am just a young person, a brother, a son, a partner. So yeah, I'm mostly someone like who's like into tech. Really love the tech space, and yeah, I pretty much like come from like the Cape Flats and originally from Eastern Cape. So that's pretty much like a little bit about me. Yeah.
Where in Eastern Cape?
In Kala.
Oh, Kala. You are the people who, when you say we're in Eastern Cape, they're from Queenstown.
Yeah.
But actually, you're not from Queenstown. You are from Kala.
Yeah. I was like gonna be like Kala. It's after Queenstown. Like I wanted to use Queenstown as a reference, but yeah.
You are quite big in open source. What's the advantage of doing open source?
I think pretty much like as we build like tech, we find that there's a lot that open source can offer. Yeah. And we normally would use a lot of like packages and libraries that are open sourced. So part of like my passion around like open source technology is it actually helps like the needy. Like sometimes you find that you want to build a project, but you actually do not have the necessary means to actually fund it. That's where now open source comes into play, like where you can actually build off like open source technologies and you still like achieve more or less exactly the same objectives as with a business that has more resources and funding. So for me, the love like of open source like comes from that perspective. We work and I often think of it as like if I put more effort in open source, it means I'm also enabling others as well to be able to use those technologies and they can more or less like achieve what they want to achieve.
Yeah. For someone who's starting out and they might be thinking about working in open source, where would you say they can start?
So pretty much what I would say is the first point would be like I look at like the ecosystem that you're working with. Yeah. In my world, like that would be in like the NPM like ecosystem, the Node and JavaScript world.
One of your contributions was with Node, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's you first take a look at there. What are the packages that you're using which are open source, which were written like by someone like maybe out there in the world. And then what you basically then when you look at it and then you look at the actual project itself, the repo, and then you see if there's any issues. I think my first contribution was with a library that we used that work and it had something to do like with converting like an HTML page to a PDF and to generate an invoice. So there was an open source package and we had an issue like where we saw that it was not generating properly like images. And the first now contribution was to look at the project itself and then look at how can I contribute in that project. And then that's where like I got started. I would say you first like look at the packages that you're using like within your projects, and then from there you go as far as finding the exact projects and then seeing if like there's any open issues that you can submit yourself if we have the time, and then you can actually take a look at the guidelines on how to contribute in that project, and then you can sort of now start maybe to pull the project down and start like working according to the guidelines specified in that project.
I see.
Yeah.
So you are contributing to open source. You are now senior. Let's take it back to where it all started. Sibabalwe from the Cape Flats. How do you end up in computer programming?
Yeah. So it's quite an interesting journey, and like from where I come from, there hasn't been like a lot of information around like careers like within IT space.
Okay.
So where it all started, I think I was doing grade 9, and there was a program at school at Sibabalwe at the time, and we had someone like who was coming, who was gonna run a program. We had a computer lab, but we couldn't have access to the computer lab because the computers were not working. So you can imagine like the only time like I could actually get to like play with the computer was actually going to the library, and I think there was a Smartscape like program.
Smartscape, yeah.
So you only have about 4 to 5 minutes to actually be able to access the internet from there. So, and it's only once a day, and sometimes you don't even have access because there's a queue.
There's a queue, yeah.
Yeah. So then there was this program at school. I don't know how I was selected, but I was part of it. So we had this IT specialist who was taking like the learners, I think they were teachers as well, through the program, and we were fixing computers like that way in our computer lab. So we fixed those computers, and fortunately I had always been like that type of a person who was always curious and wanted to know more about the person that's who's behind like the program. So after school, I got the time to actually speak with him because he was coming from, I think, Joburg, and he was here for the program.
Yeah.
And I had a bit of time like in chatting with him, like how we got started, and that's when I immediately knew that my career or what I want to become, I need to like work with computers either way. And then from there I moved on, and then I joined a program called ATT Teach, which was mostly teaching all about like how to use computers, how to write emails, and how to write your CVs, your cover letters. And fortunately enough, I turned out to be like one of the top students in the program, and that's and that's when I also tend to be inquisitive around the career itself, and started asking the teachers like how they started and what they have done, like and how they ended up like teaching IT. And from there, like they pointed me like to computer science, that this is one maybe study field that I might be interested in, and I wanted to take a look into. And as I was going through the program, the ADT Teach program, I think it was a 3-year course, so mostly teaching end user. I think it's called end user computing.
Wait, is this still in high school?
This is still in high school.
Oh, so this is happening when during school hours or after?
So
program?
It was mostly after
after
school hours, as well as during holidays.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
So
for 3 years.
For 3 years, yeah. So as I was saying that I was kind of fortunate, like I'd been like at the top of my class. So, and then now as I was top of the class, I was awarded like with a PC, and that was the first time I actually had like a computer in my bedroom because my parents couldn't afford one. And that was like, okay, this is it. This is when I can actually play and see like what's possible like with having a computer at home. So that's where all this started, and that's when I was actually now introduced into the other parts of like the IT field. And that's when like upon researching, then I find that actually where I might find that can be challenged quite good would be in computer science, studying computer science.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much how it all started.
So did you after what's happening after high school? Where do you go?
So after high school, and then also fortunate doing well in matric, and then that afforded me an opportunity to go to UCT to actually study computer science.
This is 2000 and...
This is 2014.
2014.
2014, yes. Yeah. So that was quite an interesting opportunity, the first one in the family, to actually get to that level and studying BS in computer science at UCT. I think I was also majoring in maths at the time. So yeah, I did my first year in 2014, and I had to change like from majoring in mathematics to information systems. Then I found that those two majors are quite like aligning, and that's when I started like my varsity journey. So from first year, like that adjustment, obviously being university and being the first one, like it was a huge culture shock, but I had like this passion that I wanted to study.
You know what you wanted.
Yeah, I want to study like computer science, and
And was computer science what you expected it to be?
Not when I got into varsity. There was a lot of concepts that were thrown around, and from like what I thought like we're actually going to be sitting in a lab and behind a computer, and that's what like basically I thought like we're going to be doing like programming, and it turned out like we had to learn a lot of the concepts around the fundamentals, and
so it's just theory.
And the only time you get to actually be in a lab was when we're doing like assignments.
Oh, hectic. So you've tutored at a code college, right? You see how these programs are currently, all these not so traditional colleges. Is it best to go the traditional route for someone who just matriculated, or would you recommend the coding colleges?
The first thing to probably think about is actually your learning style. For one, like I learn mostly by doing, like sometimes by failing and struggling. That's how I learn. At the same time, like I'm quite like strong in like capturing like the concepts and the fundamentals, the theory. So I think anyone who would want to actually like see where they actually can benefit the most of, they need to first like understand like how do they actually consume information, how do they learn. So there's value like with going through the traditional route. There's value going through like boot camps and actually getting like the practical way of doing things. So that's what I'd say. Like it's, we kind of need to understand that fundamentals. For me, as much as like I had like sort of like understood that I can actually grasp concepts, but there was that lacking part, like practical side, which would have complemented like my learning journey like quite well.
Okay. Yeah. When I hear other programs like from some universities, I really start to wonder if it's really worth it going through that 3-4 year degree when it can be done at a code college. Because there's some really good ones out there.
Absolutely.
Like Code Space, which we both worked at some point, and Within Code, you know. There's really great colleges out there that really do a good job. So why would I go to college? Why would I go to university for 3 years, 4 years if I can do it in a year or two? You know. But yeah, I guess it depends, like what you're saying, on your learning style. You graduate varsity. How was the job hunt for you?
Yeah, actually, well, it's quite an interesting story. So, when I was now closer to actually the graduating years, that's when like now, that's a challenge I think that's happening like in universities today is the lack of funding. So as I'm drawing closer to finishing, I actually like now see that I'm lacking funds, and I have to go back home, and my mom had to pay like for certain funds. And then 1 year, like she able to pay, and then the following year, like I couldn't like register. and only to be like sort of called like when registration has passed that you actually got funding. Have you registered?
So you just gave up at that point?
So like at that point, I knew that this is not possible. I need to find an alternative. It's either I find a job or I go to like maybe a coding bootcamp. And quite interestingly, when I was at varsity, one like important like aspect I think about that environment that I realized later is it gives you like the networking space.
Varsity.
Yeah, varsity. So you get to meet like a lot of people coming from various backgrounds who happen to be in life like in different spaces and different like environments, which if like taking the time to actually network and get to know them, it actually also helps once like they start like in the industry. So now the story is while I was in varsity, I actually now participate in the developer groups, developer society, and we get to plan events and tech events.
You were the vice chairperson, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. So we get to plan these events. This is when now I actually get the experience to interact with like developers who are already working in the industry and understanding what it's like to be a developer. And now it's getting like that interest is now growing more as I'm hearing all these experiences and everything. So as I was there, like we're like organizing events where students could intern like over holidays and they can like get experience and be able like to actually after graduating be able to go like to companies like with a little bit of experience.
Yeah.
So fortunately there was like the biggest like marketplace like for developers like the company, not sure if I can mention name.
Sure.
Like Offerzen at the time was starting and they were running a pilot program like in the event, and I got to know about it that this is the marketplace where companies can find developers, and created a profile.
Which year was this?
I can't remember if it's 2015 or 2016, but
second year,
but
Offerzen was around that time.
I think it was just about starting, and they were testing, like they were just like done like development, and then they were about to test. So and then they were a company, and they were hiring I think talent advisors. So now when I saw that I was actually not gonna be wrapping up school. I think this was in 2017. And then I was like, there's actually this company called Offerzen that are hiring, and they are working with developers. They're about finding helping developers find work. And I went through the interview, and I still remember like the person who interviewed me, the feedback that he gave me. And he looked through and we spoke, and he was like, look, you are really an amazing person. Like, you'd be a great fit into the team.
Yeah.
But I'm going to say no. Like, and to my...
Are you interviewing to work?
At Offerzen.
At
now.
Offerzen.
Yeah,
not just being in the hiring pool.
Yeah.
Okay,
so now I'm in where I'm at, like, I'm thinking about finding work so that I can pay for my fees and go through school. So this is the first interview that I was able to secure, and went through the interview and to be rejected. And my curiosity quickly jumped, and I asked why. Well, why are you rejecting me? Whereas you just said I'll be a great fit. And his advice was, your CV is more of a developer. From where I'm standing, you'd benefit more if you were to actually look for a job as a developer. And then,
what was this job for then?
So that was a talent advisor. So within Offerzen, as developers apply and put up their profiles, there's talent advisors who advise them on their CV.
The structure. So it was not a dev position.
Job,
Okay.
So he said no, and gave me feedback, and they said, look, from where I'm standing, you need a little bit of work to actually showcase to potential employers where you at with your tech skills. And he gave me a good advice. It was like, okay, you're not going to be in university. Maybe try coding boot camps and work through projects and put those in your CV and then apply maybe a little bit later on, like, and see where you would be at.
Yeah.
So that gave me a bit of purpose and an objective to actually go to a boot camp. And I knew from when I was like stepping into the boot camp first day one that the goal was to go through the program, even if like I do not get to like wrapping up the entire like semesters in the boot camp. Like I need to find a job. The goal is to find a job. And fortunately, I landed up at a Project Codex in Cape Town. So that's when like how I learned my approach to learning and how I was doing everything, and how I ended up like having also to tutor at CodeSpace, which was now building that portfolio, which I'd gotten feedback from that I need to have these certain like items on my CV in order to prove like that I'm actually interested in being a developer. And that's how actually like the story came about. You know?
This kind of reminds me how even now you still are very much involved in the community. You still do a lot of networking. It's almost like it didn't just start now that you are senior.
Yeah.
You've been that person since, and it has paid off multiple times.
Yeah.
I'm sure. All right, cool. So now you finish university, you get this funding, and then you finish university. Do you now go back to the people who funded your studies to work for them, or?
That's the thing. I honestly never had back from them. Like since when they asked like if I was actually in school and if they can pay for my fees, and I said no, like I can't go back this year. I need to find a job, and yeah, like that's how it ended. Like the conversation ended. Yeah, and there hasn't been any follow up since then.
Advice for people who just graduated, they are trying to get into the industry. Currently, it doesn't look like there's a lot of jobs for especially for junior positions. What is your advice?
I think that the most important part is that the market is quite like really strict at the moment. So a lot of companies, they're looking for people they can teach, who have like a good attitude and who are really, really interested and who really care about like growing, and people who have already like trialed out like different projects and of their own. Like that's where if you recall, like companies, they want someone who I can say can I hand over this task to you, like can you run with it, and can I give you a little bit of like teaching like for maybe 1 week, and then the following week can you run on your own, even though like someone senior might be involved. So it's really about like going the extra mile, and sometimes not even being strict on the actual programming languages themselves, like trying out like different programming languages, taking courses, as long as like there's a project or an outcome that you're working towards that you can present, and you can actually say, this is what I learned by actually going through this project and doing this project. And yeah, that's where like I'd say like most businesses are looking at. And then there's the other side, like where now you have like your big tech, where now they care about like your actual computer science fundamentals. If in order to pass the filter, you need to actually know how to actually program like those programming exercises or tasks. So that's like a really also important part that one can also like focus into.
What are some of these fundamentals?
So like your basic data algorithms, data structures, need to know about complexity analysis, big O. So
wait, what? Big O?
Yeah.
What is that?
So if you think about, let's think about maybe, let's say an algorithm, or you have like, we are writing a function. This function calculates maybe it's two like numbers and then gives you an answer. How that's like each like variable that you declare, like be it using any programming language, like you kind of need to understand like the actual memory that that variable would take up. If we were to deploy it, like there's a certain like bytes that variable that you have declared is going to take up. So now when we get to maybe complicated like functions where now you need to compute or go over like 100 like items or as in a for loop, and you need to do some computation like, with those items, the time it takes to actually do the computation, albeit like you're searching maybe for a specific word in an array, it matters like when now you supposed to write like a real like function which is going to go into production, because it's time. Secondly, when you're now thinking of a production system, it's gonna cost. So those fundamentals around big O, it's basically around analyzing like the actual code that you have written, and you take into account whether like the different like internal functions that I can use to actually achieve the same results within a short amount of time.
Is that still important in the JavaScript ecosystem? Because generally you don't worry about, I mean, there's no clearing of memory or anything like that, but is that still, should you still be worried about such?
I think so. It's really, really important, especially like in nowadays where applications are deployed in the cloud. Because if you think about it, what goes under the hood, and then amount of memory that you might need to allocate to an instance, it's going to be based off like how you actually have written your code and whether or not it's optimized. So yeah, I'd say like they quite like really like important fundamentals that years later you only get to realize like the importance of them once you like quite involved like with like big projects.
Okay, so you mentioned so the fundamentals you were still counting. You said big O, and then what else?
So those are data structures as well. So like understanding your strings, how do you manipulate a string, arrays, and they go like advanced, like you have your hash maps, your linked lists now, and you have like your algorithms, how like bubble sort and search algorithms, binary trees. Like there's quite a lot of like concepts which are advanced. They are simple concepts, but
you
they
use them often.
Yeah, they quite applied. Like if you think about like the social media space and how like these big systems are built, chances are when you're taking a closer look, you'll likely see an example of all these algorithms, like which are fundamentals. Sometimes you can sort of be in a position where you need to write a solution, but you can always like lean off all those fundamentals actually to getting to a proper solution.
Yeah. What's your favorite function?
Sure. As in an internal build, like within a language, or
JavaScript, Python, any you tell me.
Yeah, I'd say a map, like map. So basically, like you have a list of items, like be it its names or any like other list, and I just like the convenience of how like you can easily compute and get to a result. So if, for instance, I was searching like for individuals like who carry a particular name, like, and I want to do something with them, or like now like sort of deal or compute something with like a separate array, like a map, it's like a quick way to getting that array. So it's quite like also like pretty fast there. So
yeah. When you were still junior, what's your worst experience as a junior developer, so that we can prepare people out there, especially the ones who are just starting out? What's your worst memory as a junior developer, and how did you overcome it?
Yeah, I'd say feeling that I don't know enough. That's like, I think it's imposter syndrome in a way. So I've always pressured myself that I always needed to know like a lot about what's going on, even what's going on in production. and I tend to forget like that I was a junior and no one expected me like to know like what is a production system and how it runs. I used to pressure myself quite a lot about that. I think it could be also attributed like to the environment that I always like sort of went for, because I went for like startup companies and the environment like required me to like step up and learn more and be able to like get the skills as quickly as possible. So I think one part like would be like imposter syndrome. Like you'll get to a point where you feel like you don't know enough, like, and you would beat yourself about it that you're supposed to know this, especially when things go wrong. But yeah, like as a junior, no one like expects like that much.
I think that is important. No one is really expecting much from you. You are a junior, you are an intern. Just ask people for stuff, you know, and there's nothing really wrong with asking, and hopefully your seniors are not assholes. That happens. I feel like we must not shy away from the fact that we have senior developers out there who are just assholes. You know. But that's great advice. No one is expecting anything from you. Google Cloud recently announced a new region in Joburg. You posted about that. You're like my go-to person now for Google Cloud platform things. What does that mean? And can you just maybe explain what is GCP? But just start with the region thing.
The region, So how I can explain...
This is now coming from a cloud engineer. Dang, dang.
So basically how I can explain a region, and I'm going to explain a concept of data centers. So with a data center, you have like basically like a number of servers like within like a building. And what those servers basically do is store data. So what companies normally do, or the data like that they produce would be basically located in that particular location. So with a region, you can think of it like as the main data center in a particular like geographical area. So in our context, we have got South Africa and the neighboring countries. So now this region in Joburg is like the main like sort of data center. And this means that for companies who build like applications within the GCP ecosystem, they have a choice now to choose where that data can be stored and retrieved from. So in our context, it can be Joburg. So and then what you then also have, you can have zones. So now these are like small like data centers which connect up to the main like data center, which is
so a zone is not the main data center. Are zones still with geographically close to the data center? Do we have zones?
Not currently, not as far as I know, but with other like Europe regions, as you go wider, like within the areas, like they would have like a central point where like you can actually like sort of like store your data. And the purpose of like having a region and storing your data is because one, you want to minimize latency. So like when you're retrieving your data, you do not want to be waiting for quite some time, you know, actually getting that data. So you want to like be able to see that you actually have your data. So that's pretty much like the concept around region. So, and then going back like to GCP, I'd say it's more of like an environment where there's a variety of services. It's cloud services.
What does GCP mean?
It's Google Cloud Platform.
Google Cloud Platform. Okay.
Yeah. So what basically it is, in the olden days, like there was on-prem, like companies, like they would set up like their own like servers within their own premises. So what that has changed now over the years is that we've got cloud platforms who are actually doing all that work and actually owning the hardware and making sure that the hardware is proper and maintained properly. And we got now to a point where like companies now, they no longer need to set up like their own infrastructure and have the hardware and the maintenance And then what would basically happen, like within the GCP platform, like you get to choose like a variety of services, that be it like it's a storage service, like a cloud storage packet, or you actually want to deploy your applications, as in you're using a serverless, or you're actually using Compute Engine, you want to have your own like sort of like setup. And quite what's popular like would be the serverless, like because that helps a lot of businesses to like quickly deploy and be able to move on quickly and be able to like come up like with features like in their own systems. So that helps, like, because there's no setup or infrastructure maintenance. All that's needed is a simple combine command, like you just to cloud app deploy, and that's it.
Can you change regions now? Let's say you started something and then you were using Europe, right? But now there's a new region here. Is it possible to change?
So with some services, it's not. With some, it is.
Okay.
So typically, you must recall that earlier on I mentioned that you choosing a region for the purposes of like this is the place where you're going to be storing your data and where most of your resources are going to be found in. So now the process of changing to a different region would also involve that you want to migrate your data from that region to the region that you have.
Okay.
And then you can now spin up resources within the region.
And is that migration something that GCP can handle, or do you literally have to write custom code to migrate to a different region?
They absolutely have like all the tools built in to actually migrate that data.
I guess I'm asking, there's something of POPI Act and all that stuff where now at least it's possible to have the same services, but while still being compliant with the act. Okay. Yeah. Do you think we need more data centers for GCP in SA, or do you think Joburg will just do us fine?
I think there's quite a lot of like business which relies on like having resources within GCP. We do like I'd always say like we need more to enable like businesses like to be able to store data like that is like within the country and within the same like compliance standards. So yeah, I'd say that. And also like if you think about the African continent as well, there's also other businesses that will likely benefit from having so we from a business perspective, it's helping a lot of companies like to actually be able like to now like have like their systems running in GCP.
Yeah. Favorite GCP feature?
It has to be Cloud Run.
Cloud Run.
Yeah.
What is that about?
It's a serverless like computing service. So it's mainly what's needed is like a Docker container of your application, and what it takes like it's the app deploy, and then you're done. You have like your system like deployed. It's without any setup.
Wait, what are you saying? You take a Docker container and then you just deploy using Cloud Run.
Yeah. So you have your Docker container, and what you also want to do, depending on where you want to store your Docker container or within like the same GCP environment, and what you then do, it's a case of like referencing that Docker container and letting Cloud Run that you want to deploy like an instance of that Docker container, and it's going to deploy it on your behalf. And that's basically it. It's like a less than 3 commands or 4 to actually deploy. Yeah.
And setting it up, is it also quite simple?
It's pretty much quite simple as well. Like if you want to now have a deployment pipeline, it's merely like maybe declaring like a YAML file and specifying the actual service and the region that you want that instance to be deployed in, and reference that Docker container I spoke about, and that's it.
What are some of the things to consider when creating a pipeline, now that you mention it?
So I think one important aspect is you want like this system that you're building, that it can be sort of like replicated in multiple like environments. So where now a Docker container is enables you like to be able to now have like people who can actually have the more or less exactly the same copy of the code base. So that's the first part. So now when you're looking at like computing services, you wanna work with computing services that give you that flexibility to work like with a Docker container. And it means that like you also can like sort of deploy in one environment, and then you can always like also, if you're not happy about that environment, you can go somewhere else and then spin up exactly the same code base in a different environment. But what's really important is that Docker container. So, and then secondly, what happens is you want to look at the cost. Like, does it scale down to 0? Or is it always like running 24/7? Because there's always cost, like when it comes to cloud, there's always cost like with having your services like running all the time, having instances like always active.
Yeah.
So with serverless services themselves, like they allow like to scale down to 0 when you do not have like any traffic or load that is like being processed. So that's the other aspects of it.
Docker, right? Docker is just it's a container, so you can have all your code base and its dependencies in one place.
Yes.
Why do you need Docker when you can pretty much achieve the same thing with GitHub?
Remember, now you sort of want to build like your actual like libraries and their dependencies and binaries. So think of it like you have got this system, like this code base, and you are working on it and you're running it locally, and then you're able to test it locally. So now you need like a tool which is also gonna follow exactly the same steps as you follow that. I want you to actually install this package, go to this directory and run this command. So you want like this one like sort of tool that can also not only like sort of work in your computer, but someone else as well can be able to follow exactly the same like commands. So now if you think about like having a pipeline like on GitHub, it means you kind of now you aligning like all your processes like to GitHub, and they always like sort of gonna be attached like to GitHub, and no one else like can be able to maybe pull down the code and run exactly the same steps. So yeah, that's how I think about it.
Okay, cool. As a senior engineer, how do you deal with change management? Just take me through your process, because like you mentioned, you're working with open source. There's updates every other week, and I'm sure you know it's not only one library from the open source. So how do you manage?
I think the most important part is to always like stay on top of things and be updated on what's going on. And there's a lot like around like with packages around open source that you find there's a new version and it's addressing a certain problem which has been found by someone else. So sometimes it's really important to like go into the actual like change logs of what has been released and what problem is being fixed. So I tend to like subscribe to a lot of like groups and environments like where I can find information on what's going on or what's latest. And from there, like I'm able like to sort of make like informed decision to say, actually now we've running on this particular package and this particular version. Now we need to move to a different one. These are the reasons, and this is no longer being supported, and no one is actively working on this particular version. So that includes like online platforms and even like GitHub repos themselves. Like I have a huge like subscription list of repos, and I'll see each and every change which is being committed, and if I've got time then I can see like and read like what's going on, what's
and then now in your everyday development, do you have time to actually factor those changes into your workflow? Because corporates tend to just want that feature out as soon as possible. The maintenance part of your development cycle is almost always just like, you'll get back to that.
Yeah. I think what we normally do, like within our current team, is to highlight the importance of why we need to do the work, and really like highlight also what can happen like if we actually do not get to that part. So it's normally around justifying why we need to do that work.
That is important.
Yeah, which is really like the important part. And fortunately, once you have that in place, like there's always like gonna be a buy-in, like to prioritize like the maintenance. So yeah, like I've been fortunate enough like to work in a team like and being led like by people who are really take maintenance very serious.
Okay, that's great to hear, because maintenance is never priority. Until it's too late.
Yeah,
then it's a whole rewrite.
Yeah,
it's not just maintaining now.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. Your stint at CodeSpace, did you enjoy teaching?
Yes. Yeah, that was like a different space, but yeah, I loved like teaching. I think even as part of my role, like a lot of like colleagues that I work with, they still look up to me like to teach, like and be able to mentor there and there. So it's also like kind of paved the way, like as I became like more senior, like there's now becoming like more of responsibilities. You need to be able to mentor like intermediates and juniors. So that skill to be like able to teach like kids how to code, that gave me like that confidence to be able to explain concepts and know like how to like explain like clearly, or like be patient. Sometimes like you kind of need to be patient and explain over and over up until like someone gets like the concept. So yeah, I think it was like a skill like that I learned like while I was at CodeSpace.
Would you consider doing it full time? Teaching, that is?
I think so. I would. I would, given an opportunity.
And now you're writing articles. How is that? How did that come about, number one? And yeah, just talk me through that.
Yeah. So how it came about, obviously at work we do reviews, and as I like now becoming more senior, like there's responsibilities now a part of like the role, like being able to communicate clearly, like in written form, and being able to also speak clearly and articulate like your reasoning well. So how that came about is now I sort of understand, and I read a lot of articles, and I need to work on like actually now writing well and being able to write like spec docs and all that. So now I have all this information, like because I learn a lot, and sometimes I want to jot down ideas. I'll jot them like in a piece of paper or in a board. And then when I look at it a month later, I'm like, okay, this is actually good information. Someone else would have benefited out there about from what I'd learned and my experiences. So now the idea to actually now start writing came like from that perspective. Like it was a review at work that I need to work on like this particular area, and then I actioned it. I quite like someone who gets a feedback and will quickly action on it. So I went into now this process of like having to write, and fortunately at the time I applied to that offers and like writing team, and I was allocated someone who can edit like as I was writing. And so it was mostly about sharing like my experiences and putting that down for like someone else to be able to read and resonate with what I've experienced. And it turned out like to be really good. Like I've received like good feedback on it. Yeah.
Is there more writing coming up? Or?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
What are your least favorite things about writing?
I think it's mainly the part where you'd have an idea that you want to write about this particular topic, and then you start like now overthinking and want to complicate it. Sometimes I find that it's easier sometimes to just like, even if it's like 2 paragraphs, as long as like there's a particular message that you're trying to get across, and someone else who will be the first, like maybe editor, or look at it and be like, oh, okay, you're talking about this and you're talking about that. So these are either related or not related.
Yeah.
And then you kind of want to keep it as simple as possible, so that like whoever is going to read what you have written like can follow through like what you have written. And sometimes for me, I like to be in a, like to write something where I want to leave the reader like with questions and or ideas, like we're like, oh, okay, I've spoken about this, like what can I do? What can I do next? And you just want to leave someone with something to learn or to question. And this is where like now you're also like helping a person like to actually go and investigate and find out more.
Are you writing anything outside of tech, or is it all tech related?
It's been mostly tech, but I honestly want to write about the experiences as well, like being in tech. And yeah, that's mostly what I want to focus on.
Okay, cool. What is it like working with one of the most exciting startups in the country currently?
It's been quite an interesting...
Are you guys still startup though? Just clarification.
I honestly wouldn't say maybe startup now. Like, yeah, like we've grown quite a lot, like significantly over the years. And yeah, it's been quite an interesting journey. Like from like working like as part of the team, I think there was a point like where I was like the only dev in the team, and then like to actually now having like a full...
Oh, you were dev number 1?
Yeah, dev number 1. Yeah.
Oh, hectic.
Yeah, so...
big dogs.
Yeah. So it's been honestly like inspiring and interesting, and I think it's a lot of like key highlights of my career was when I was working as part of this team. So there's a lot of lessons that I've learned over the years as well as a developer. Like it makes me think about how like big companies who have now like grown big, and how like when they started and how it was like, and how like the growth like was sometimes painful, and how like things got to where they are. So yeah, there's quite a lot of lessons.
And how is the culture at a startup versus corporate?
I can definitely say like within like small teams, like it's fast paced. Like your work, what you're working on is really important. There is a client who would benefit like from the feature you're working on. I haven't like worked that much like within the corporate space. Like it's been mostly small companies, and I've always like gotten to like the pace, like being fast paced, working on something which is a priority, and we have like a client who's gonna be using it. So it's definitely an environment where like you need to sort of adjust like quickly to changes. Sometimes you wake up like you get focus, you're gonna be focusing on one thing the following day. You need to change that focus, and then you focus on something else. So I think for me, like to actually speed up like my career journey, like I'd say like being in a fast-paced environment has accelerated a lot of like my growth.
You are dev number 1 for some time. That means you were doing anything and everything, back end, front end, database admin, DevOps.
Yeah.
So how many programming languages do you think you know?
So because we kind of, our programming languages like we haven't like used quite a lot. So we like have started like with a monolithic application written in Python, and the front end was in Angular 1. So, and then from there we moved to
Angular 1.
Yeah. Like, my actually first job, like I started with Angular 1.
Angular 1.
Yeah. So it's Angular 1. So, and then from there we moved from that stack to more of like modern TypeScript Node runtime, and then React on the front end. So, and then we had like this concept of microservices for quite some time, and then now we kind of in a space now we looking at the modern microcentric Next and Next. So yeah, like I've been mostly in the JavaScript world there for quite some time, and also bits of Python, like programming. Yeah.
Okay, I guess that's actually a good thing. At least the JavaScript ecosystem has a lot to offer.
Yeah.
So there's a lot you can do. If you're one person, you don't have to be like, okay, now I have to context switch to C# or something.
Yeah.
And then you have to context switch back again to JavaScript. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. First time speaking last year? Was it your first time? How was that?
After some time, like, yeah, I haven't spoken like in years. Like I used to be in a debating team in high school.
Okay.
But I built the fundamentals then. And then upon going to conferences, that's when like I started like loving and wanted to get involved. So it was my first time.
First time speaking. You nailed it, bro. For your first time. That was. So what was that talk about?
So it was building data pipelines within
HSP.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. And how was the nerves before?
I did a lot of preparation. So I'd gone through with some friends and prepped quite a lot and got feedback. So by the time I actually got into stage, I'd already sort of like nailed on how I was actually going to approach the presentation.
Okay.
So I knew that, okay, I'm approaching it in this way. And if it doesn't work, then I will likely live with the feedback.
Yeah. Honestly, I think having your team there was a great thing, so that you're just surrounded by people who are just going to talk nonsense and calm you down.
Yeah.
You know? Okay, cool. So your article was around networking and how to use that time effectively. Can you maybe just touch a bit on that advice for people considering going to meetups?
Yeah, I think as I like indicated earlier, that networking is like a really, really important aspect that we often realize later on, like the importance of it. And it's even way more important now because a lot of people work remotely. So in order like to get to know and see people, you need to go out to these events. And sometimes it can mean that you meet someone like who's later going to be maybe your colleague. And that's how like you can like form those relationships. And also sometimes you meet someone who's going to be your friend, who's going to help you like with a lot of like other aspects around like the careers like that we have. So mostly I'd say it's like being firstly going to these events and finding and discovering them. I use mostly ZA Tech. They have an announcement group there. And then there's also Meetup. So you can search for your area and you'll see the ones that you can attend. Can be in person or online ones.
Yeah.
But if you've got time to go to in person, like at least have one person that we have spoken with in the event.
But how do I speak to that person? Because I'm gonna get there. Sibabalwe and his crew are in the corner there. I'm gonna get there. Someone else in their crew are in the corner there. And how do I approach him? Do I just say hi and then what?
I think the basic thing is to always like do not sit like with people that you're familiar with. It's like if you arrive and then you see them, you can sort of like start like introducing yourself like to anyone who might not be or who you might not be familiar with who's sitting next to you. Just introduce yourself. And then the conversation can carry on from there and be around like about the actual topic which is being presented. And then that could be like your gateway to actually starting a conversation. You can ask the person sitting next to you, what do you think about what's going to be presented here? Like, do you have any knowledge or experience with it? What are your thoughts?
I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
Do you have any knowledge?
Yeah. So you can...
What do you think?
Yeah. So, and mostly one aspect that is fundamental is sometimes when you take time to get to know people will likely like to speak to you about what they do or about themselves. So you kind of need to show that interest as well, that you're actually quite interested in the person that you're speaking with. That's how like you end up in a situation at the end of the conversation. The person can like, where can I find you? Do you have like any social media network where we can connect? So you wanna make sure that even if like the conversation is about the event, but you actually want to know more, or to appeal as if like you're interested like in understanding the person. Yeah.
Are you speaking to any conferences, meetups this year?
I will definitely be doing that. Yeah, there's quite a lot. I will likely be applying to certain conferences as soon as they open up. Yeah.
Locally only, or are we passporting?
There's a likelihood, but yeah, I'll apply and then see if like I get accepted, and yeah.
Quick maybe 2 or 3 features on the GCP platform you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I think I'm looking forward to seeing the serverless services growing.
Okay.
And I think there's a lot of offering there and value for money as well for businesses. I think also the other aspect of it is the actual infrastructure as code. I've seen a lot of like integrated part there where Terraform can be used now. Like you can write your entire infrastructure and then be able to deploy it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm quite like looking forward to seeing quite a lot of like open modules like from that side. So yeah, those are mostly the 2 things. Yeah.
I know this came out sometime last year in May, June. The OR feature on Firebase. I hated Firebase for not being able to. You can't say OR. You can't write that query, bro.
Yeah.
That's like. But now it came out, and unfortunately, I cannot upgrade to Firebase 10 yet.
Yeah.
Because on the JavaScript SDK, it's on 10.
Yeah.
But that is one feature where I was like, yes, I'm looking forward to. We're in the process now of upgrading to 10. I'm looking forward to using that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to plug?
I think for anyone who's watching out there is like taking like a look into the tech industry.
Yeah.
Like there's more than one way to actually get involved nowadays. Yeah, there's quite a lot like even on the internet. But yeah, that's it.
All right, cool. Thank you for doing this, bro. Sure you're gonna come back again soon. After you go and speak overseas and stuff and be all top dog.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for taking time out to do this. Catch you on the next one.